Imagine you are 18 years old. You've just received a letter that will change your life forever. Mandatory military service. 7 years of your youth, taken without choice. You pack your few belongings into a small bag, kiss your family goodbye, and wonder if you'll ever see them again. Welcome to the Korean People's Army. This is the reality for hundreds of thousands of young women across North Korea right now. What happens behind the concrete walls of their military barracks is a story the regime never wants you to hear. Former female soldiers who escaped describe a world where being a woman in uniform means facing dangers that have nothing to do with combat, where survival depends not just on following orders, but on avoiding the predators who give them. What you're about to discover will expose the hidden nightmare of being female in the world's most secretive military. It's 4 a.m. in a military compound somewhere near the Chinese border. Lee So-yeon jolts awake in her bottom bunk, surrounded by the sound of 24 other women breathing in the cramped concrete barracks. The smell hits her first: sweat, soaked into rice hull mattresses, unwashed uniforms, and the fear that permeates everything. Lee is one of the few women who lived this reality and escaped to tell us about it. Her testimony, along with other brave defectors, reveals a truth so disturbing that it challenges everything we think we know about military service in North Korea. These are the words of women who lived through years of systematic abuse, who endured things that should never happen to anyone, and who risked their lives to tell the world what really goes on inside North Korea's military. This is their story, and the reality is far worse than anyone imagined. In 2015, Kim Jong-un made a decision that would destroy the lives of countless young women. Military service, once voluntary for females, became mandatory. Every woman between 17 and 20 must now serve 7 years in the Korean People's Army, the longest mandatory service in the world. The government claims this change came from necessity. North Korea's devastating famine in the 1990s killed so many people that by 2021, there simply weren't enough men to fill the ranks. Women became the solution to a military shortage caused by their own government's failures. Today, an estimated 40% of all women aged 18 to 25 wear military uniforms. That's hundreds of thousands of young women, trapped in a system designed to break them down while building up the regime's power. But the real reason so many women originally volunteered, even before 2015, wasn't patriotism, it was survival. In a country where people starve, military service meant guaranteed meals. In a society where success depended on party membership, military service was often the only path to joining the Korean Workers' Party. The regime knew exactly what they were doing. They created a system where women had to choose between slow starvation and military service, between a lifetime of poverty and 7 years of hell. 25 to 30 women are all crammed into a small room. Everyone gets a small bunk bed and a tiny set of drawers. On top of those drawers, 2 mandatory pictures stare down at you: Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, watching your every move even in sleep. The mattresses are stuffed with rice hulls that absorb every drop of sweat and bodily fluids. After months of use, these mattresses become breeding grounds for odor and disease that make sleep almost impossible. But the sleeping arrangements are a luxury compared to everything else. Former soldier Lee So-yeon describes the shower situation with horror still fresh in her voice years later. There's no hot water, just hoses connected to mountain streams. Women would turn on these hoses hoping for a quick wash, only to have frogs and snakes come pouring out with the freezing water. The lack of basic facilities extends to the most personal needs. Until 2015, women had no access to proper sanitary products during menstruation. They had to fashion makeshift pads from bandages, washing and reusing them when the men weren't looking. But here's the most shocking part. Many women stopped menstruating altogether. The combination of malnutrition, stress, and brutal training caused their bodies to simply shut down. As Lee So-yeon describes how after 6 months to a year of service, women in the military stopped menstruating because of malnutrition and the constant stress of their environment. The women actually felt grateful for this because having periods in those conditions would have made an impossible situation even worse. The daily routine combines military training with traditional gender roles in the cruelest way possible. While men and women both endure physical training and hard labor like farming and construction work, women have additional duties that men are completely exempt from. They must cook for their fellow soldiers, clean the barracks, and perform household chores while the men rest or engage in other activities. Videos smuggled out of North Korea show women clearing farmland and carrying heavy bundles of firewood or rocks on their backs, doing the same back-breaking labor as men. The regime literally calls women tukong unjong-su, cooking pot lid drivers, meaning their place is in the kitchen. Even in military service, Even while carrying the same weapons and doing the same labor, women are reminded daily that they exist to serve men. Food rations are meager, often just a bowl of rice and cabbage soup with some salted radish. This is nowhere near enough for people who engage in strenuous physical activity daily, often in the frigid conditions of northern Korea. The inadequate nutrition contributes to the health problems that plague female soldiers throughout their service.
밥도 이제 밥 공기에다 주면은 꽁꽁 누르면 3숟가락 정도.
실조 같은 거 걸리지 않나요?
엄청나죠.
The accounts that emerge from female defectors reveal a pattern of mistreatment so systematic that it represents institutionalized misconduct. What happens to women in North Korea's military isn't accidental. It's built into the system. Lee So-yeon never experienced rape herself, but she watched it happen to her fellow soldiers repeatedly. Company commanders would order female soldiers to stay after hours in their private rooms, but the individual stories are even more horrifying. Da-eun Lee, another defector, describes being called to a private meeting with a 45-year-old major general when she was just 18. He ordered her to undress under the pretense of checking for malnutrition, possibly to send her to a hospital, where undernourished soldiers were treated.
저한테 막 달려들려고 하는 거예요. 제가 막 소리 질렀어요. 그러지 말라고 막 소리 지르고 하니까 뭐 작은 천막 안에서 소리 지르면
The major general then threatened to make her life a living hell if she ever spoke about the incident. Like so many others, Da-eun had no one to report to, no authority figure who would believe her or protect her. Jennifer Kim, whose real name cannot be used for safety reasons, was 23 when a political advisor summoned her to his office. She knew what was going to happen, but couldn't refuse the order.
You don't say anything to each other, but you instinctively know that when a political advisor orders you to come to his office, you know what he wants and what he will do to you. But if I refuse his request, I can't become a member of the Workers' Party of Korea.
Women from disadvantaged backgrounds assigned to construction work face significant safety risks. These women are housed in basic accommodations with limited oversight and protection compared to standard military facilities. They experience higher rates of harassment and misconduct, with fewer resources for reporting or getting help.
Ironically, he asked me when I last had my period. He was trying to calculate the ovulation cycle. After enlisting in the military, my body became so weak because I couldn't eat well, so I had my period about once every 4 to 6 months. In the end, I was sexually assaulted by him.
When unwanted situations lead to pregnancy, the challenges multiply. Military leadership often holds women solely responsible for their circumstances, regardless of the actual events. Women are pressured to resolve the situation quickly, frequently without proper medical care or support systems. Desperate female soldiers resort to dangerous methods to terminate pregnancies. They tighten army belts around their stomachs to hide growing pregnancies, while continuing grueling physical training. They take anti-parasitic drugs meant for livestock, hoping the poison will end their pregnancy without killing them. Some throw themselves off mountains or roll down hills, using physical trauma to force miscarriages. The most chilling detail comes from expert Hyunju Lim, who notes, based on testimony from escapees, that it's common to find fetuses in army toilets. This single sentence reveals the desperate lengths women go to, rather than face the military's response to pregnancy.
그 남자한테서 몸을 이렇게 당했어요. 그래서 배가 나오잖아요. 임신이 돼서 생활제 돼요. 그런데 그 남자를 욕하는 게 아니라
For those who can't hide their condition, the military takes over the handling of the pregnancy. Jennifer Kim experienced this horror firsthand when she became pregnant after being assaulted by the political advisor. She was taken to a military medical office, where a surgeon performed an abortion without any anesthesia or pain medication.
A military surgeon was already waiting for me. He performed an abortion on me without anesthesia. The pain was truly... But the pain did not end there. It still haunts me today.
This forced sterilization of abuse victims adds another layer of cruelty to an already monstrous system. The regime not only fails to protect women from violence, but then punishes them for the consequences of that violence by destroying their ability to have families in the future. Jennifer Kim describes punishments that would be considered torture in any civilized society. Women were forced to stand outside in freezing weather, wearing only underwear for hours at a time. They were made to run 100 laps in full uniform until they collapsed from exhaustion, with guards watching to ensure no one stopped early. But the worst punishment Kim witnessed involved forcing women to plunge their hands into icy water, then immediately placing them on frigid cold iron bars.
North Korea is extremely cold. The moment I put my wet hands on the iron bar, my hands froze onto the bar. When I tried to remove my hands, the flesh was torn off. I can still feel the pain from thinking about it.
This happened to every woman in the unit if even one person made a mistake. The message was clear. You are responsible for each other's perfection, and failure will be met with unimaginable pain. The psychological impact of these collective punishments cannot be overstated. Women lived in constant fear, not just of their own mistakes, but of what their fellow soldiers might do. This created an atmosphere of suspicion and anxiety that made forming genuine friendships or support networks almost impossible. What makes these abuses particularly evil is the complete lack of recourse for victims. The military claims to take abuse seriously, with official sentences up to 7 years for men found guilty of rape. But as expert Juliette Morelot explains, most of the time nobody is willing to testify, so men often go unpunished. Women can't report their abusers because the system is designed to protect predators and blame victims. Even if they found the courage to speak up, who would they report to? The same commanders who are committing the crimes? The same party officials who depend on military loyalty to maintain their own positions? The silence is enforced through fear and practical necessity. Speaking up means losing party membership opportunities, which means a lifetime of poverty and social stigma. It means being labeled a troublemaker, which makes you a target for even worse treatment from commanders and fellow soldiers alike. Even female soldiers stationed in rural areas don't have access to private toilets, with some telling researchers they often have to relieve themselves in front of men, making them feel especially vulnerable to harassment and assault. The abuse of women in North Korea's military isn't separate from the country's broader oppression. It's part of a comprehensive system designed to control every aspect of human life. The military reflects the same patriarchal attitudes found throughout North Korean society. Women are expected to serve men, whether in their homes, their workplaces, or their barracks. The regime takes this exploitation even further through institutions like the pleasure squads, groups of up to 2,000 young women, used as personal servants and slaves for Kim Jong-un and his top officials. These women are recruited with promises of serving their country patriotically, but end up as property of the leadership. Kim Jong-un disbanded his father's pleasure squads when he took power in 2011, giving each woman the equivalent of $44,000 in hush money. The connection isn't coincidental. Both policies treat women as resources to be exploited for the regime's benefit. Whether serving as soldiers or as pleasure squad members, women exist to serve the needs of the state and its male leadership. The pleasure squads operate through the same height requirements as military service. Women must be under 165 centimeters tall, given Kim Jong-un's own short stature. None could or should tower over the supreme leader. After recruitment, these women are kept in the leader's mansions and brought out to entertain high-ranking officials with parties loaded with alcohol and sexual activity. Women can remain in pleasure squad service for up to 10 years before being released into arranged marriages with North Korean military officers. Yet another way the regime controls their entire life trajectory, from recruitment through retirement.
국가에서 맺어주는 중매를 서는 남자랑 결혼을 해야 될 수도 있고 딸이 갑자기 죽어.
The international community has documented these abuses extensively. The United Nations Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in North Korea found systematic violence in the military and throughout North Korean society. Human rights organizations have collected hundreds of testimonies describing the same patterns of abuse across different time periods and military units. Yet the abuses continue because North Korea remains isolated and unaccountable to international law. China, North Korea's main ally and economic lifeline, refuses to condemn these practices or pressure the regime to change. Other nations impose sanctions and issue strongly worded statements, but Kim Jong-un continues to rule with absolute power over his people's lives. Recent intelligence reports from 2024 confirm that high-ranking defections have surged, with more government officials fleeing than ever before. Even people inside the system are losing faith, suggesting that information about the outside world is penetrating North Korea's information barriers, despite the regime's best efforts. Meanwhile, women like Lee So-yeon, Jennifer Kim, and Da-eun Lee risk everything to share their stories with the world. They face ongoing threats from North Korean agents, struggle with trauma and health problems in their new countries, and carry the guilt of leaving other women behind in that hellish system. Today, these women live free, but permanently scarred by their experiences. Jennifer Kim still cannot have children because of her forced abortion. She struggles with relationships and mental health issues that may never fully heal, requiring ongoing therapy and medical treatment.
Because of that experience, not only do I still struggle mentally, but I'm also not able to have children. So even now, it's difficult for me to have a good marriage.
They speak out not for revenge, but for the hundreds of thousands of women still trapped in the system. Every testimony they give, every interview they endure, every time they relive their trauma in public, they do it hoping that somehow their suffering might help end the suffering of others. But speaking out comes with ongoing costs. Defectors often struggle to adapt to life in democratic societies after spending their formative years in North Korea's totalitarian system. They face discrimination and skepticism from people who find their stories too horrific to believe. Some become what critics call career defectors, earning money by giving speeches and interviews about their experiences. While this provides necessary income and keeps international attention focused on North Korea's human rights abuses, it also means constantly reliving trauma for public consumption. Right now, as you hear these words, hundreds of thousands of young women are living this reality. They're waking up in those rice hull mattresses, bracing themselves for another day of abuse, wondering if they'll ever see freedom. Kim Jong-un continues to use women as tools for his regime's survival, while pretending to modernize their treatment. The regime announced distribution of premium sanitary products to female units, but former soldiers confirm that rural units still lack basic facilities and private toilets. The government talks about gender equality, while maintaining a system that treats women as property. They speak of military honor, while enabling systematic rape. They claim to protect their people, while destroying the lives of their daughters. Every day this system continues is another day of hell for North Korea's female soldiers. They didn't choose this life, but they're forced to live it. They don't want to be heroes, but their survival makes them warriors in a war they never declared. The testimonies of those who escaped carry a simple message. The world must not forget the women still trapped behind those concrete walls. Because in North Korea's military, being female isn't just about serving your country. It's about surviving a system designed to break you, abuse you, and silence you forever. The question that haunts every free woman should be simple. How long will we allow this nightmare to continue for our sisters trapped in uniform? And what are we willing to do to help them fight back against a regime that treats their bodies as battlefields?